and welcome to another edition of RealConvo with Alan Mednick and Miranda right here on America's Voice News. So good of you to join us. I'm really looking forward to our guest today because she's mind-blowing.
You got it. That's the word.
Right. You know, because so many people are struggling. We all see those commercials, right, where if you're in pain, take this prescription. If you're having problems with memory, take this prescription. But she's actually studied tools and techniques that you can use at home that don't require pills, don't require machines. And it's fascinating.
Well, the way I always like to explain it is like when we talk about the brain, a lot of people are used to talking about it like it's a computer.
Right.
I like to get away from that and talk to it's another part of the body.
I'm sorry, I do not compute.
So basically, you know, you have your heart, you have, you know, every other part of your body. And if there's a problem with your heart, what are you going to do? You're going to exercise, you're going to eat right, you're going to do things that are right. Same thing with the brain. There are other means besides medication. Medication sometimes is necessary.
Of course.
But we have to do other things too.
So joining us now is neurologist and founder of the Outsmart. She is a brilliant and beautiful woman, and we're so excited to have her on our program, RealConvo, Shannon Sanguinetti. Am I saying that right? And if I'm not, you can correct me. I'm just learning to exercise my brain.
Thanks, Miranda. It's Sangunetti, but very close.
Sanguinetti.
That's why I had you do it. And by the way, she's a neuroscientist.
Did I say it wrong? Did I say neurologist?
I think
okay, I'm so sorry. See,
neuroscientist.
This just means I need you even more. Does that make sense?
Yes, we can work on memory. It's easy.
I would love to do that. I'm so excited to have you on this program because I think we're going to learn a lot.
Yeah, Shannon, I really appreciate you coming on. You know, we talk a lot about, you know, obviously the mind, mental health.
Right.
And when we talk about it, you have different aspects. You have depression, anxiety, you have bipolar. We even had somebody on talking about voices in their head.
Right.
And these are different aspects of the brain, of what happens in your brain. And in the past, we always thought that, you know, maybe somebody has something wrong with them, but we found out that it is illness. And like we could take an x-ray of the body, now there are x-rays of the brain that we actually show the differences. And I'm so glad we have a neurologist on, a neuroscientist. See? You got me saying it.
I got in your head.
So we have a neuroscientist on that is able to explain this. So Shannon, I want to ask you, starting off, are there differences that you could see in the brain between anxiety, between
Well, we have
depression?
A couple of images, and it's a little hard to tell. I mean, obviously, if we're not a neuroscientist like you, but these are some brain images. You have studied the brain extensively. I know a little bit that these are like synapses, correct?
Right, yeah, so these are, you're right. So these are actually neurons that are forming new memories. And so in the previous image, what we were seeing is in image A, neuron in its state where it hasn't formed a memory yet. And in the next image B, it is starting to form new connections. And those new connections, after a certain period of time, then when we have this memory or this thought or a behavior over and over again, think about learning to play the piano, for instance. You've got to figure out how to put your fingers in the right place on the keys. You've got auditory stimulus coming in. You need to read the sheet music, and you also need to get the feedback to know that you hit the right key. And all of those require connections to be formed so that you can become very efficient at this process. That's why by day 8, you're better than you were on day 1. And so these are actually synapses forming in the brain to make this really efficient connection. So when we think about things like anxiety, depression, having thoughts that might be suicidal, all these types of ideas that we're not quite sure how they form. This is how they form. There is actually a connection that's going on. And unfortunately, a lot of times what people will say is, oh, this is just, imaginary. This is hocus pocus. This is thin air. And when I was a young kid, it wasn't really being talked about that much. But we can actually use this principle, which is called long-term potentiation or learning. And we can do something backwards called long-term depression, which is kind of like strategic forgetting. And so we can actually use the tools that we know about the brain to sort of reverse all the way that the connections are made. So just like proteins and ions physically move in the brain to make that connection and grow, we can use those proteins and ions by allocating a new memory and pulling those proteins and ions back apart. and using them for other things, which is retraining our brain, overriding old thoughts, and putting ourselves on a new path.
So I want to, for people that are, Alan mentioned anxiety, depression, obviously with COVID-19, a lot of people are dealing with that now. They may be drinking more than they should, substance abuse, you name it, not taking care of their bodies. Or maybe they are dealing with, like I've told you, my mother has dementia, Alzheimer's. What are some suggestions you would give to people? Let's start off with the depression, anxiety, some ways that they could exercise their brain to help them combat some of the issues that they're dealing with right now.
Right, yeah. So I would say the first thing is, if you have gotten to the point where you are in a state of anxiety or depression, as Alan was saying, things like schizophrenia, these are states. And in order to get into this state, your brain has to have basically formed certain connections. But like I said, we can strategically pull those connections back apart. So a lot of times when we're diagnosed with something, we think that this is just me and I'm stuck in this state forever and my genes make me this and I can't get out of it. But that's not true at all. There is a lot of evidence that shows something that's called epigenetics. And epigenetics is how our bodies respond to our environment. Whether or not you believe that humans inhabited the planet based on religious scripture or some other form of thinking, we agree that we all started on this planet living outside. And really our brains and bodies are designed in that fashion. So we are taking things that seem threatening today, and we are processing them as if they're a lion trying to eat us, or as if a snake is trying to strangle us while we sleep. Because we don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to worry about these stressors. We go to the grocery store and we get food in the refrigerated section instead of hunting down a bison. And so what we can do is, the first thing we can do is we can start by communication, reestablishing communication with ourselves. And emotions are really important in this. A lot of times you say the word emotion and people kind of think, oh gosh, this big hairy word, emotions. But really what emotions are our body's response to the world. It's a physiological response that tells us, okay, this is happiness, and this, I'm happy because I gained sustenance. So if I got a berry in the wild, I would be happy. Versus if a lion was coming at me, I would have to build up enough energy to potentially kill that lion. So the first thing that I would say is that you can reestablish learning to how to communicate with yourself, understanding what emotions mean, understanding how they're processed in your body and what types of responses are going to happen. The second thing I would say is that you can change your diet to make huge differences. Good fat, olive oil, salmon, avocado, good healthy fats with a lot of DHA, omega-3s, omega-6s. You're really going to be able to give your body the tools that it needs to manufacture what's required to make these new connections. So if you're not doing the things required for your body to make the building blocks, it's going to be very difficult. So you really want to start with the building blocks. And of course, there's 20 other things like rewarding yourself when you do something good. And to your brain, a reward is a highly fattening food. It's sugar, it's alcohol. Anything that would reduce your stress level is a reward. And so not
Shannon,
drinking or not eating things. Yeah.
So one of the things that you pointed out there, which I'm so happy about, is I told you I've been having salmon every morning with my eggs. I love it now. No. So I've been really good on that one.
Not just salmon for breakfast. This man has an obsession with salmon. But you're right about omega-3s. A lot of people think it's just, oh, I want to look good. But it's like medicine for your body. You need those things.
Yeah, one of the things I want to get to, Shannon, is last time we met, you had given my son a bell. And in that bell, you told him to put it on the door. And you told him every time you open that door and you hear the bell ring, you want to think about what you're thinking about. And if it's a negative thought, you want to change it. I love the saying. She has a saying on her website that says, free your mind and the rest will follow.
I love that song, by the way. Alan didn't even know that was a song.
I knew it was a song in Vogue. And actually, I saw that you're a singer, too. But anyway, can you explain how you do that? Again, when you have the bell on the door, you hear it ring. What's the purpose of that?
Right. It starts with understanding your emotions. So when the bell rings, a lot of times what will happen in the brain is like I said, because we used to live outside, now being bullied becomes the replacement for a lion jumping out of a cave at you. And when you think about the way that your brain is going to record that information, a lot of stress causes a memory to form really quickly. And that's because you don't want 8 lions to come at you before you realize this is potentially dangerous. You want to know it's dangerous immediately. And your brain is going to replay that stimulus over and over and over again, unbeknownst to you, because it's trying to just keep you alive. And so in that same vein, if something has happened to you early on in life, some sort of stressful thing, you're going to hear those voices and mental pictures are going to come to you all the time, over and over again, and you're not really aware of it. And sometimes maybe you are aware of it, but after a backlog of information, what ends up happening is it starts to make you feel really bad inside. So if we're not taught to communicate with ourselves, it's going to be really hard. So you want to check your thoughts. But how do you check your thoughts if somebody's not constantly saying, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? So this bell is a great way to do that. You put it on a door that's very frequently used. And every time that bell rings, it's first you name the bell, give it a name and treat it like it's your best friend. And every time it goes off, you talk to your best friend and you say, well, that's interesting. You think I'm ugly. So I put mine on my bathroom door when I first started this. And I was like, oh, I think I'm ugly, you know? So, well, what makes me think I'm ugly? And then you have to go back and retrace your memories and find where that root started. There's a root to that memory. It's not actually your voice majority of the time. And sometimes it is your voice, but that's the difference in parsing out where it's all coming from. So we have to find where it comes from, and then we're going to reroute that thought, and then we're going to train that thought over and over again so that we can make new connections like that image that we saw, but they're positive connections.
That's amazing. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you sharing that with my son.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated with it, and this is just not even enough time to really go into this. So Shannon, I hope you can come back and you can learn more information about the Outsmart. Her, again, she's the founder of this website by going to our website. Again, that's real-convo.com. Still more to come. You're watching America's Voice News.